if you think about it just in terms of, okay, who are we responsible to in each category, or who is responsible to you, might be a better way to think about it. Let's look at the employee quadrant. So who are you responsible to? As an employee, you're responsible to the corporate ladder, or the corporation, or your boss if it's a smaller company. And who's responsible to you? The employer is responsible to pay you. And so, there's literally a week to week agreement, if you will. You show up and do X amount of work. You show up 40 hours a week. You show up, for the month, whatever it is. Maybe it's hourly, maybe it's salary. If you agree to work for 25 hours, I agree to pay you for 25 hours. If I'm the employer, I'll pay you $25 an hour. You work an hour, you'll get paid $25 an hour. That's our agreement to each other. And obviously there's a bunch of, we have to treat each other well and all of that, and all that's important, or you're not going to have any employees. And same thing as an employee. If you're a crappy employee, that's not going to work out for you very long. So we obviously have other, responsibilities that we have to fulfill, but essentially you work for X and I'll pay you Y. That's the agreement in the employee quadrant. Self-employed. We think that, this is where the E-Myth, if you haven't read the E-Myth, a great book that really talks about the transition from employee to self-employed. When we move into the self-employed category, who are we responsible to? Well, number one, you're self-employed. So nobody is responsible necessarily to take care of you on a week-to-week basis, but now we are responsible to our client. So as a self-employed individual, nobody's responsible for taking care of me. Yes, I still have an agreement with the client, but ultimately I'm responsible to the client. So things begin to change a little bit there. And then we move into the big business. So who am I responsible to if I own a big business? Again, it's my clients. I'm responsible to my clients. Yes, I have agreement with my employees, but ultimately it's my clients. And then we move into the investor category, which is interesting. So, I spend a lot of time talking about alternative assets like real estate investing. Most people don't know this, but just like you can invest in the stocks and bonds and mutual funds, and you can invest in your 401k, you can also invest in alternative assets. Some of them require that you're accredited. Everything that we do requires you to be accredited, but even an unaccredited investor can get involved in alternative assets under certain regulations with certain operators, and there's crowdfunding. There's a lot of ways that you can get involved in it. But as we move into the big business, now who are we responsible to? And if you think about this in terms of the big picture, just bringing it back into like what I was talking about, who are the big businesses, the public businesses? Who are they responsible to? They're responsible to their shareholders. And so, yes, we still have all the employees, and yes, we still have all the other things that we had in the other categories. But the reality is, when we get into the investor quadrant, let's take a big company like, let's say Pepsi, publicly traded company. They're responsible to their shareholders ultimately. There's a fiduciary responsibility. They file with the SEC, they file with the trade commissions, whatever, depending on what type of industry they're in. They have a fiduciary responsibility to their investors, to their shareholders, just like we would in even a private company has a responsibility to their shareholders. If you invest with us passively, we have a responsibility to our shareholders. In a publicly traded company, the company has a responsibility to their shareholders. It doesn't change. It's still the same. But the reality is the ultimate responsibility, the ultimate fiduciary responsibility lies on the company to provide for their shareholders.